Hello and welcome to today's Movers and Shakers virtual event. My name's Lee Natasha Salter and I'm Managing Director of Movers and Shakers. I hope you're all having a great Tuesday. So I know most of you know Movers and Shakers very well by now, but for those of you who don't, Movers and Shakers is actually 25 years old this year. We've been a membership organisation since the start. And the idea is to connect the influence, decision makers, leaders in both the private and the public sectors, enabling them to do business and to do some great projects. We're also known for the quality, high level of our speaker events, the contributors, the discussion, and also the pertinent issues that we cover. In 2020, we created 4 pillars: sustainability, inclusivity, social value, and technology, which we're carrying through all of our events. Today is in fact our 20th virtual event since April, which is great news, and they're all on our YouTube channel. So please do take a look, enjoy them, and do subscribe. So today we have one of our views from the top sessions, which are interviews with chief executives and leaders. And today we welcome Arshad Bhatti, who is CEO and founder of Apex Airpspace. He'll be interviewed by David Jennings, who is chairman of Movers and Shakers. Welcome to you both. Okay, with the backdrop of the government's Build, Build, Build initiatives and the planning reform announcements, it's clear that housing is still top of the government's agenda. One of the measures to drive up housing supply is the new permitted development right that's coming into force this month, which allows you to build 2-storey extensions on top of detached buildings that are at least 3 stories high. So Arshad and his team have been heavily involved in this, in shaping the actual concept, and they're looking at delivering at pace 2-storey extensions. They've got funding secured from the Mayor of London and also Homes England. And they're working with the local boroughs in London to look at how they can help them meet their affordability criteria. And as you can imagine, cities outside of London are looking at this concept too and engaging on what they can do. So it's exciting times. So I'm delighted to welcome Arshad and David to this event today. I will leave you in their capable hands. Please don't forget you can ask a question via the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and I know they'll do their best to cover as many as they can in this session. So thank you very much. I'll leave you to the session. Please enjoy. Thank you again.
Thank you, Lee, and welcome, Arshad. And good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see so many of you tuned in today, and I've been through the list this morning, and many I would consider to be industry friends and colleagues. So great to have you with us. Now, Lee mentioned in her introduction the Prime Minister's Build, Build, Build programme. You can almost hear him saying it, can't you, and banging the table. And the recent planning announcements around permitted development rights. And as Lee said, 2-storey extensions on 3-storey detached buildings. So this morning's conversation with the founder and chief exec of an organisation that specialises in building above existing buildings is both timely and topical. You'd think we'd plan these things, wouldn't you? So Arshad, let's kick things off. Let me ask you first of all, how the heck you came up with the idea of building on top of buildings? Where did it all start? And broadly, how has it developed?
Thank you very much, David. Firstly, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to Lee as well, and to Movers and Shakers platform. Well, this idea for me personally came with once when I was looking for an office for my other business, and I went to this building in Camden. It is number 1 and 2 Wilmot Place, very close to Camden Tube Station. And this building was 3-storey, and I was offered, if I like, I can buy the office, but also the freehold of the building. And it was surrounded by buildings which are 4-storey high. So it did occur to me during the process that can I put an extra floor on top, and the building being in Camden, it would be an expensive property. So this is where it all started. I think the key moment was when I thought about how to build it in terms of not just planning, but how actually we will build it. That's where it became very interesting.
Okay, and just to give us, sort of kick things off as well, to give us a perspective on the business, how many homes have you developed so far? And give us, again, just to give us another insight, how typically, sort of how much is in the pipeline?
Well, we have done 2 prototypes. So we built the first one in Camden in Wilmot Place, then we did another one in Abbey Road. That was to see the concept, how it works, not only the buildings that we control, but also the buildings owned by other people. There was also this element around, because when we started, I mean, even for the first project, when we started looking at how we're going to build it, and there are people, there are leaseholders or tenants living in different, in existing properties, how are we going to make sure that the inconvenience to them is not overweights the benefits of any extra new homes. So I came up with the idea that perhaps we should use volumetric modular construction. I researched into that and found it a suitable solution. So first we used that on Wilmot Place, then we used at Abbey Road. Both were high-end penthouses. It showed the end quality of the product. Then we did a research into what is the potential. So we looked at, we engaged HTA, who looked at every building in Camden and identified the potential. After having the numbers that it is a big business that could be developed out of it, we can help deliver London the homes it requires. We engaged with the government. We looked at different obstacles, different challenges in this, how to deliver homes. And those challenges, then we did a lot of research and development. Now we have, we engage local authorities, we engage with the mayor's office, we engage with the central government. So we asked for planning and we asked for funding. Having secured success in both, now we're engaged with 10 local authorities and roughly 2,400 units in pipeline. So,
Okay.
sorry, long-winded answer.
Okay. So presumably, I imagine anyway, that your projects are done in partnership with building owners. Typically, what types of organisations are you working with in terms of getting a development together? I mean, leaving aside the public, the government from a planning perspective, I'm talking about owners of buildings.
So when we did the research, we also found out the demographics of who owns these buildings which are suitable. So in Camden, there were 475 buildings with the potential to build 2,475 units. So we looked at who owns the buildings. 1/3 is owned by public, 2/3 is owned by private people. At that time, we didn't look into the retail sector, which we realized afterwards. Then once we start promoting this idea and have done these couple of prototypes, the second one was a building owned by 7 leaseholders. So they use this opportunity to upgrade their block. So we work with the private freeholders, with leaseholders who potentially own the freeholds, public bodies, and also estates where the institutional freeholders, where they own large number of freehold properties that are capable of extra floors.
Okay. I'm just going to mention before we continue, just to those watching, please use the question and answer tab at the bottom of your screen to answer questions. And I'm going to do my very best to pick these up as we go. So having talked about, if you like, the different organisations you work with, and I imagine you're working with housing associations as well as private investors, give us an insight into the models that you employ and how you deliver value to the different type of building owners, and if you like, what's in it for them. So if you mentioned a minute ago about you engage with leaseholders. Let's take that one first. What's in it for a leaseholder group?
I think it is probably most attractive for the blocks which are owned by leaseholders.
Yeah.
Is what happens is that during the process we have to do 2 things. Firstly, we have to make sure that with any additional housing built on top of existing buildings, we comply with the building regs. That means we have to comply with the current building regs, and building becomes more safer. Yes. So, the second part is that as part of the planning permission, we have to show that we are actually improving the existing building. So the output needs to blend in. So in both, and then there comes like for the Abbey Road, the reason they wanted to, the leaseholders wanted to upgrade their communal areas, they wanted to upgrade their insulation, they wanted to have a better outlook of the building. So at the end of the project, they were able to achieve a better insulated, better looking building with enhanced value of their current properties by having not spent any money and having an extra housing in place. So for leaseholders.
So go on.
Sure. So to leaseholders, these were the who owns the freehold. These are the benefits. So they are a better building, they have enhanced value of their flats. Then we move on to the freeholders who own.
I was going to say, you can probably guess my next question. So yeah, what about the interface with the freeholder?
Absolutely. So for freeholders, it is basically obviously the benefits that are there for leaseholders in terms of better buildings and good, better looking and better, safer buildings. Freeholders also stand to benefit from a capital receipt. So depending on the GDV, whatever is the residual value, the legal owners of the building benefit from the residual value. So you could have a rooftop, which at the moment is not of much value to you, but by doing an airspace development, it could be worth quite considerable amount of money.
Yeah.
It works differently for public bodies, but we can get onto that.
And have you yet worked with any, or are you intending to work with any housing associations?
Absolutely. Housing association, so as the business has developed, we have slowly moved towards working or concentrating more towards local authorities and housing association. Housing association, the key benefit for housing association and local authorities is that this is one way that you can deliver 100% affordable, genuinely affordable, I would say, social rented housing, because you can put land, i.e. the rooftop, in without attaching any value to that. You can claim mayor's grant, and the end cost of producing these new homes, you can service that cost through social rent. And I think that is probably one of the key elements of this airspace development that really needs to be, that we have brought out in our discussion with housing association, with local authorities, and they understand it and they appreciate it. But also for the wider public, this is one way we can deliver social housing in London, where land is expensive, where everything is expensive, at a scale.
Yeah, and the same applies to local authorities. Because have you done anything on local authority stock?
So we are working with 10 local authorities, 8 in London and 2 outside London,
Right.
reviewing, because firstly, we also looked at strategically what are the challenges, and then deal with those challenges, planning being one, procurement, and then funding, and then there are skills and supply chain, all those considerations. So we worked with them, and now we have identified 37 sites with potential to build more than 2,000 homes. With the first couple of local authorities, we have done even the pre-apps now, and we have the resident consultation done, and have evolved an offer where residents are on board and they want to be part of this new developments. So with local authorities, I think this is where our key focus is at the moment.
Yeah, and just from a business modelling point of view, I mean, from a development appraisal perspective, what are you working on, like a sort of a residual valuation? Is that how it works? You're looking at sort of, if you like, development costs, and out of that, if you like, you're establishing a value for improvements and or a capital contribution.
We started definitely from that perspective, but we have moved on. So for local authorities, there is no capital receipt. There is the end product is the affordable homes. So land is there. Local authority puts in their land to build new homes. The construction cost is whatever it may be. There is an element of grant coming from the mayor's office, and the total cost less the grant that enables you to have these houses, these new homes, as social rent, generally affordable housing. With regards to the private sector, we have moved on, and instead of acting as developers, we are now working as a digital platform that enables private asset owners to convert their rooftop into new homes. So we work on a fee basis, but we do the whole process from assessing the sites to funding, assessing the sites to getting the planning permission, to undertaking the development, to funding it, and then give it back to them. So we do the whole process and enable others to deliver new homes.
You touched in one of your earlier answers on the research you did, which fascinated me, because I always think, you know, we as a sector, we could be criticised as a property sector for not doing enough research into some of the stuff we do. But I was fascinated that you did this research in Camden, then you sponsored a wider research across London. I mean, outside of the scale of the opportunity, and perhaps you'll just give us an idea of that, what did you learn from that process?
I think it's very, very important. I think this was one of the key learnings I have, and then we were able to share it with our partners in central government and local government as well. That there could be an idea and there could be an end product, but there is a lot in between, which is research and development, which could include research as well, that actually helps you shape up your argument or help you shape up which direction you want to go to. Research was fundamental because it looked at each building in Camden from different perspectives, from planning, from construction constraints to sustainability and a few other considerations, and then came up with the buildings that are actually capable of taking extra floors. And then it put a number on that because it was scientifically proven numbers. So once we see the new legislation, we see the prints of that research all over the new legislation, because then it's easier for decision makers to understand if they take certain steps, what the outcome is going to be. For a city like London, if you can build 180,000 homes, that was the thesis at that stage, backed by that research. There is no other way to do that kind of numbers in terms of, and we desperately need new housing. So this is
just out of interest, of that number, it's a big number, isn't it? An 80,000, sort of almost like a bonus, isn't it, of 180,000 homes. How many of those would you estimate come under the sort of PDR umbrella?
It's very interesting because new PDR has a number of conditions attached to that. I think there are around 13. And we welcome those because these new conditions make sure that the houses that are developed or new homes that are developed, they are of good quality and they are of good standard. And then there is also condition around buildings to be built after 1948. I think what probably PDR does is that it goes beyond 180,000 because government has allowed 2-story extension instead of 1. But then it restricts. So it's early days. I can't give a number, scientifically proven number, but I think the cumulative effect of through PDR and the precedences will set for the other buildings, the numbers will go much higher that PDR will enable. In terms of exact number or absolute number that can be delivered just through PDR, it probably would be a percentage of total 180,000 numbers. It might end up around 30-40% of that.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. So we've talked about the PDR and the recent planning announcements, which must have been a real boost to you and to Apex. And you mentioned supporting the case. Presumably, this research it provided was that the driver for doing the research, if you like, to sort of demonstrate the case and the opportunity. And how did that work?
So research was done at the end of 2016,
right?
And that research then allowed us to make a case to the government, both at central and local level, to explain to them that by exploiting this opportunity or using this kind of technique, innovative way of using land, it can enable a huge opportunity. And I think we found counterparts at both central and local government level very supportive in terms of they want new housing to be built, and the local government want more affordable housing to be built, and it kind of deals with both their equations. And we also found that the governments were willing at both levels to support SMEs, innovation, new ways of delivering housing, affordable housing. So it kind of hit all those requirements. So it was hugely important, A, for us to be able to explain it, and B, for the policy decision makers to have the grounds for them to base their decisions on. So if they're providing funding to Apex, or if they are making policy changes, there is a clear understanding why it's being done.
I mean, London councils, amongst others, and I read something this morning about the RIBA and other organisations, have come out fiercely, is the word which is a great word, isn't it? I heard this morning, against the proposals, because it's really around, if you like, them losing development controls and power. And obviously there are concerns over quality. So how do you answer those, if you like, in the world around the problems of PDR and the genuine concerns over what we might end up with? What's the answer?
I mean, we've also engaged with a number of councils. And what is encouraging is there is an acknowledgement that upward extension PDR is different from office to resi PDR.
Yeah.
Office to resi has 3 conditions attached to that. This one has, I think, around 13.
Right.
So this one is, there is a link to design, there is a link to space standards, there is a link to right of light, there is a link to transport, there is a link to number of other things. It doesn't apply to the buildings before 1948. What it does is that it provides a surety around the process. So if you meet the 13 conditions, the end result is going to be good quality, attractive housing at a speed. But those 13 conditions make sure that it's good quality and it's not like 10 meters square meter flats or something. So it allows you a mechanism to do that. Now, local authorities obviously have bad experience, if we would say, around office to resi. So it would take some time for everybody to understand that actually this PDR is different. There is an acknowledgement. We intend to do more work and explain it. But I would doubt it if in 3-4 years time, there would be a consideration that actually the second PDR, which is the upward extension, has produced the kind of housing that office to resi has. No doubt.
So picking up, if I may, on local authorities, London boroughs, and you mentioned, I think you said you were involved with 10 of them, and bearing in mind what we just talked about, if you like, the stigma of PDR, what are your, I mean, broadly, what are your discussions like with local authorities? Is there I mean, are they open-minded? Is there a preconception when you meet them? What's the dialogue like?
I think it has been a process over the period of time. Initially, there was a lot of skepticism around the whole concept. But going through all the different elements, now we have brought it down to 9 kind of strategic strands that each of them need to meet a certain threshold for any local authority to actually have a go ahead. And planning is one of them. Yeah. And we've been quite upfront because we are working to help them to deliver more housing and the kind of housing that local authorities want. So in all our discussions, what we have got no certain preference that it has to be done through permitted development. We are equally happy to deliver it under full planning permissions. But in certain organizations are also keen to make the process quicker and happy to use permitted development. It's kind of our partner's choice, but it does, I mean, no doubt that it does allow with the government decision, it does allow it more credibility, it allows more certainty in the process, and it provides pace, so things can be done at a pace.
Okay, so having talked around the sort of the planning piece and the model, let's move on to some of the technical challenges, and using a technical term myself around plonking a couple of floors on top of an existing building. So, you know, what are the biggest challenges? And at this point, for those of you at home and using the miracle of technology, we're going to have a look at a scheme that you've remodeled for a London borough. So if you can, give us a quick overview of this scheme, Arshad, and typically what were the challenges? Sure. What are the challenges?
Sure. So this one is a scheme owned by this building. There are 2 actually detached buildings owned by a housing association. We have agreed with them, and now we're getting the planning as well to build there are 28 existing flats. We're going to put 30 more flats. They're going to be bookends. They're going to be in the middle. There's going to be lift and some flats in the middle, and there is going to be 2-story extensions on top. Key issues are in terms of buildings' capability to take extra load. So we're putting exoskeleton to do that. Second one is to make sure that actually residents can stay in the property, so there is no decanting involved. It has got pitched roof, so taking the pitched roof off and putting new floors. Third one is inconvenience to residents, so we're making sure we're using volumetric modular on top to keep the process to the shortest possible time for the residents in terms of the actual installation. There are some families in there which are overcrowded, so they will have the first right to move to the new flats and possibly nominate somebody. So that's a big plus. There is landscaping. So there are a number of things that we are doing for the residents. Technically, the building is not capable of, as it is the foundations, to take extra floors. We're putting exoskeleton. So there's a technical advancement. And in terms of working with council around planning, this has been cited as an exemplar project whereby we are densifying the existing site in the heart of London while also producing 100% affordable. I think once it's done in the next 12 months or so, it's completed, it would provide a really good example how we can provide affordable housing at a scale.
And in terms of, just to sort of give us a perspective on that, what additional extra space are you providing over above what's there already?
So there were 28 flats currently, and we're going to put 30 more flats through combination of infill on the bookends in the middle and extra 2 floors. So there will be 58 at the end of the development. Okay. And there is no decanting. The people are not going to leave even for one day their houses.
Okay. Now you mentioned modular construction earlier, which you know, I'm a big fan of, and I think there are an awful lot of people trying to get modular schemes off the ground across house buildings. So what we want to look at now really is how you've made modular work, and what led you, and you touched on it earlier, what led you to the solution. And as a precursor to this, let's run a quick 60-second video. Perhaps, I think it's a scheme you did in Abbey Road, and perhaps you can talk us through the scheme.
Yes, sure. On this scheme, this building is owned by 7 leaseholders. They approached us after they have seen our first development. They were very keen to upgrade their existing building, because they were trapped in a situation where building needed new cladding, it needed renovation of its communal areas, it needed new windows. So they did a deal with us in terms of sell their airspace, where we can put a new flat on top, and they can do all the upgradation works. So we did as a whole package. In the end, they benefited from a capital receipt. They benefited from new facade to the building, which improved their insulation of their existing flats, their value enhancement of their flats, and they didn't have to decant even for one day. And as you can see, the actual installation of the new apartment, which is over 1,000 square feet, it was done actually within 24 hours, just one day. So no decanting, just one day, upgraded, value enhanced building, and they're living, and it was obviously landscaped as well. So all these benefits that were delivered to this, and we saw those leaseholders once after that we met. I mean, apart from creating more housing at a desirable location, it was also hugely beneficial for people who are living there. I think a really good example.
There's a question on here, which I think you've cunningly answered there, which was from Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous. There's a lot of these. How do you work with leaseholders and freeholders when implementing works, as disruption could be quite significant? I think you've answered it there. And was that sort of a key driver? I mean, apart from the logistics, was it around disruption for the modular volumetric solution?
I think in terms of airspace development or building above rooftops, the idea has been around for a long time, and people have done it previously on a scattered basis. But to turn into a scalable A, business model, B, a model to deliver housing at a scale, modular manufacturing, the improvements in the last 10 or 20 years is a key ingredient. So it's the industry knowledge enhancement that has happened in the last decade or so, which is the key enabler point over here. We have also, once we are working on a large scale business that we want to do tomorrow and in coming years, then it's easier to deploy resources to make sure that we can do the communication, we can keep the communication channels open, we can work collaboratively, and everybody stands to benefit from it, not just the developers, but also the people who are living there, and if there is a freeholder. In this case, the freehold was owned by the leaseholders.
Yeah. There's a couple of questions here that two linked together from James Greenway, which I'm going to read out to you, which I think are quite important. So, could you ask Arshad how he sees the minimum space standards being integrated as part of PD rights expansion? And then he goes on to say there appears to be no minimum space standards in permitted development rights conditions. Unfortunately, ... And I think you may be right. So, what's your answer to that? How do you manage that?
I think that what the government has said is that they will be implementing certain things through the building regs, in terms of ensuring that what is explicitly explained there in the legislation is that it needs to meet the right of flight criteria. It needs to meet 13 other criteria in terms of design and right of flight and amenities and transport and being built after a certain time. But they've also said, which is yet to be published, that they will be controlling certain things through building regs. And it was also a case that when we presented our recommendations to Mayor's office, to the committee over there, who were doing research into the ills of basically office resi PDR, we requested, or our proposals, there were 3 proposals that we put forward. One was to meet the design standards. The second one was to make sure that it has affordable housing, and third one, that fees are paid to the local authorities. 2 of them, I think, have been accepted. The government didn't agree with the affordable, but we have found a different way of delivering affordable that is above local authority buildings and public buildings. I think there is a little bit more clarifications are to come. I'm not in a position to answer how they will adhere to it, but there is a mention that certain things will be controlled through building regs.
Yeah, funny and interestingly, picking up, there's a question here from Mr. and Mrs. Anonymous again that says, have the recent changes to building regs Part B had a significant impact on the viability of certain airspace developments?
It does. But again, this legislation, there is certain legislation which has come into effect or coming into effect in November, and there is another bill which is for a kind of overhaul of building regs that is in the Parliament now for consultation. So we'll have to see what is the cumulative impact of both. What we do know is that there seems to be an understanding that existing buildings needs to be retrofitted. Well, it's a good thing if there is no cost to the leaseholders, but it also raises its own challenges. Airspace still has a number of challenges. PDR provides its credibility and some surety around the process, and it takes the whole concept forward in terms of huge number of houses that can be delivered at scale, but it still has a number of challenges that we are working, and obviously different partners will be working on that.
Okay. Another question here from Munraj Sembi. For freeholders, do the units developed come under ownership by the freeholder, or does the new realised space belong to Apex Airspace? Can the units be installed on existing freehold buildings and be handed over to local authorities to become affordable council housing solutions?
I think there are a number of questions here.
Yeah.
We'll have to look at it differently. The new homes in all cases becomes part of the freehold.
Yeah.
So the question is who owns the freehold and who owns the leasehold.
Absolutely.
So in private sector, whereas initially, like for Abbey Road, we took a long leasehold of 125 years, which we were able to sell it. We don't do that anymore. We have moved to an enabler platform model, whereby we will do everything for the freeholder, so whoever the freeholder may be. In local authority cases, they are very keen in all our discussions to make sure all new homes are affordable, and not just affordable, they are actually social rent. So social rents are the rents like council houses. We're talking about 150 pounds a week or something like that. So they're very keen. So they do become part of the freehold in terms of the council's holding, but they will have their own leases for long leases.
Okay. And there's a question here from a young man called Faraz Baber. Have you heard of him? Never heard of him. With the government extending the upward extension opportunity for homeowners, will Apex Airspace seek to serve and exploit this market?
We're definitely looking into that. It's very, very interesting area because our research indicated 180,000 with one-story extension above suitable buildings. We did not consider the houses at that stage. But in research, it was identified in terms of a significant source of providing more space. And now government has gone one step ahead and also not only allowed more space, but also independent new apartments. So this is an area we're looking into it. I'm sure given the scale of the opportunity, Apex will be doing something.
Okay, we're running out of time. So I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions from me, if I may, to end up. So we've talked principally about London, but you mentioned in the beginning about working outside London. And my question for you is, can your model work outside London, and to what extent is it about the viability, if you like, the value of the space to make the model viable?
I think the first key element over here is that wherever land is scarce and wherever land is valuable, which is pretty much everywhere, it will work. At this stage, we feel that if the end value is around £500 per square foot or above, it works perfectly fine. It allows modular construction. It allows the rest of the expenses. But I think going forward, probably the bar will come even lower once the scale is there. I think the other element, which is quite interesting, is that it is of the principle of build up instead of build out. That is the key principle over here, that UK government is backing build up, not build out. That is a replicable solution for many cities globally. We had approaches, for example, I remember an approach from Finland, which was interesting. Not only that somebody was asking us to come and work there, but they wanted us to help them with the policy. So they wanted to have some kind of collaboration in terms of how to lobby the Finnish government to do what UK government is doing. So build up, in all the major cities, More housing is needed, especially the affordable housing is needed. And this could be a way to accelerate that provision of that housing.
And a final question for you, if I may. So where next for Apex? Where do you go next? What's the next stage of its development? Are you looking at, you mentioned Finland then, are you looking at international markets? Are you looking at other uses other than residential? Where do you go next?
I think it's a step-by-step process. So when we started, the whole vision is there that basically the rooftop is an asset. It can be converted, it can have many uses. It could have nightclubs, it could have restaurants. And with this recent COVID situation, we need bigger spaces, we need open spaces. It could have gyms. I'm always a big fan of gym being on the rooftop in the basement. It obviously can provide affordable housing, it can provide penthouses, it can provide super luxury penthouses. It caters for all the classes. For Apex, we are fully focused on making sure we take a step at a time. We have identified 9 strategic elements that needs to happen for any local authority to sign. We're making sure we make enough progress in that, sign local authorities, deliver affordable homes. We're also developing a digital platform which will put all the process together. It will be a lot more like a virtual reality situation where all the stakeholders, be the existing residents, be the local authorities, owners of the buildings, people who aspire to buy that, architects, planning consultants, modular manufacturers, they all can work in this digital environment. So probably we will develop that first in probably around, say, next 12 months, and that will be a stage for us to go further afield.
Fantastic. Well, look, we've run out of time. Arshad, thank you very much for your time this morning. I think it's been a fascinating session. For me, this is brilliant because it's a very simple idea. You're clearly passionate about it. You've backed it up by entrepreneurial flair, but you've also had a very, I think, intelligent process behind your strategy to get this thing up to scale. So I wish you every success in the future. Thank you very much for your time. Lee.
Hi, thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Arshad. That was absolutely fantastic. What a great initiative. And, clearly it's going to really help increasing our housing supply. And with the affordability, I think it's absolutely fantastic. The sky's the limit, as they say. There you go. Oh, no, thank you both very much indeed. This will be uploaded to YouTube tomorrow. So do tell your friends. Ask them to subscribe. That was fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Our next event is in fact tomorrow. Tomorrow lunchtime at 12 o'clock, we have a Views from the Top with a Difference. We have Nick Walkley, Chief Executive of Homes England, being interviewed by 3 young people, John, Pippa and Alsan, who are going to interview him from Regeneration Brainery. Regeneration Brainery connects young people with our industry. It's absolutely fantastic organisation. We'll tell you all about that. We support it at Movers and Shakers. So do register, do have lunch with us tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed, from our family to yours. Have a good day. Thank you.